What's up? So, got a TWOSUN here. Let's get it out of the box, get it apart, get it cleaned up, tuned up. Let's see what's going on here. All right. This is an odd duck here. I'm excited to get into this one. I don't have a lot of TWOSUN button locks, but this is the TWOSUN TS303 button lock. And this is, I've had quite a few. I kind of binge sometimes on the eBay thing. Like, I don't pay attention for a while, probably like a lot of guys. And then I just, out of nowhere, I'll scan and look. And man, there's just all kinds of stuff in there that I like. And so I start hanging around eBay. Well, this was one that I started hanging around. And there was enough interest on my side that I stayed with it, and I finally picked this one up for, what did I get this for? Under $115. So I think it was between $110 and $115. So yeah, let's get a better look at it. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite budget knives. What is it, a 505 or something? I got a review up on this one if you want to look at it. But let's look at this. Of course, it's oily. It's got some great carbon fiber. Woo, good texture on it. I can already feel it. Super oily. This one's in M390, TS303 M390. Look at that pocket clip. I mean, man, there's a little bit of spring in there, but not much. Let's get it wiped off, and I'll throw it in my pocket real quick, and then I can truly gauge that pocket clip versus just talking about it. I kind of decided I'm not going to talk about pocket clips anymore. I'm just going to throw them in my pocket when I'm reviewing them and cleaning them up, and then I know one way or another. I suppose they go different depending on what pocket you're putting them in. But my stuff's pretty much the same. I get to this time of year, man, I'm wearing shorts, and they're kind of the same shorts. So, and they're really not any different than like a pair of jeans in the fall or the winter for me. So there's initial wipe down. That carbon fiber feels good. All right, here we go. Let's see what's up. Ooh, kind of weak detent. Pretty much drop shut with that button lock. A little bit of lock stick there. Nice little black stonewash blade. Yeah. Pretty cool. Moswan Mokhtar. Let me give that a quick wipe. Yeah, just oily. Yeah, it's got a fair piece of lock stick going on. And I'm not too quick to mess with that because a lot of times, man, you just work it and it'll go. But there's certainly some ways to deal with that. I can polish this up in here so that where that meets, where that stick is right over there. So I can polish that, but a lot of times just working it. So I think what I want to find out first is it locking up good? I mean, it feels good in the hand. It's got some square edges. This is kind of pointy here, but there's nothing hot there. Great jimping here. Really bites. I don't like weak jimping. It doesn't do any good if it's weak. I mean, I want it to dig in to the point, I mean, almost sort of like you can see it. Let's see. Yeah, you can see that track on there. I mean, I want it to grab so that if I'm putting force and it happens to go forward and drive this knife back into my hand at all, this is to keep that from happening. So I do like this jimping. Tough. Very nice. All right. Let me, that's a fair piece of lock stick there, but let's check that lockup. Solid as a rock. How about this way? Yeah, very nice. I mean, really solid on that pivot. It's holding that really well, and no no movement here whatsoever. So I'm not going to be in a hurry to try to adjust that lock stick out of there. I'm going to let the knife kind of work on its own and realize that those two pieces of metal that are making contact right there, that piece is digging into this rounded out piece in there. Well, they haven't had an opportunity to mate and, I don't know, work into each other a little bit. And when they do, 9 times out of 10, that lock stick will disappear. So if it doesn't, I can easily go back and work that. So lock stick doesn't necessarily freak me out. So a little more when I throw it out with some authority. I mean, a lot more. Spidey flick. Yeah. It's probably just me. Yeah, it's not great. There we go. All right, I'm going to check that pocket clip. Yeah, that's a two-hand in and a forceful tug to come out. But you're going to have to pull your pocket forward and then really press down. And I mean, if that's coming out daily, several times a day, I don't know if it'll shred it because it's kind of smooth. But yeah, that's definitely a two-hand effort to get that in there. So I talk about the two TWOSUN curses sometimes, but there's a third, and that's, man, these especially Mazone with these ball clips that are short that have no flex. And so, I mean, the upside is, man, once this thing's in your pocket, it's not going anywhere. There is a firm purchase, but that is a two-hand operation to get this in a pocket right now. And there's not a lot of hope that through time this will get better. It's probably a good time for me to mention here on this, one screw into this carbon fiber. Again, it's not the greatest design. Yeah. Well, let's take it apart. Let's get her open, see what's going on in there. That wasn't very tight. There's no Loctite on this screw. It's all T8s all the way across. Probably go with that pocket clip next. Let's get a look at how it should be recessed in there for sure. I mean, it's got a really tight fit on this pin that's coming through there, and then it's tight fit in there. But I mean, it's not an optimal design, because here again, when you're flicking this thing, you can have a tendency to put some pressure on that, and with that one screw holding it, I mean, eventually that can waller out. Now, I went to great lengths in another video where I talked about, I don't know, what's that take? I mean, is it 1,000 times or 500 times a year in your pocket, 6 months? I don't know. Short term, I don't think it's going to do anything. Long term, it has the potential to waller its way out of there. Will it? I don't know. Interesting. This is another knife. I've got a rash of knives that are pretty clean. I mean, oily and all, but this thing doesn't have a lot of dirt. I'm looking in here, it's oily. I'm looking at the bearings. I don't see the dirt that tends to concern me. I'm not really looking at that. So, I mean, it makes me happy. Maybe there's a push to say, hey, let's clean these up a little bit, and we can do a better job of cleaning them up before we oil them up and ship them out. I asked the question in my last video, if they all started coming clean, if I got a rash of knives from any manufacturer and they're clean, and there's an indicator that I don't need to take them apart to clean them, would I still take them apart? Well, I would, but see, this is probably because of that that carbon fiber, but that's pretty dirty. I'm going to get in this other one. So I had another one recently that I did a little unboxing video on, that the scales wouldn't come off easy, but every time I squeezed that knife hard, oil would seep out from the sides. And this is an example of why, because even though there's no relief cuts in this titanium, man, for some reason that oil is under those scales, and then drives me nuts because, I mean, 6 months from now, I could pull this out of a case and decide to put it in my pocket. And as soon as I start handling this knife, that oil would start weeping out of those scales. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I don't have OCD or whatever that's called, you know. I mean, I'm not aware that I do. I could take things on the chin. I don't have to obsess over something. I can just go, whatever. But I just know what's going to happen when I go to actually use this knife, put it in my pocket, handle it, whatever. I'm going to be dealing with all of this dirty oil. Look how dirty that is. That's just from this one scale. And all that will be coming out from under those scales. And so it just doesn't make sense to me that I'm not going to take it apart and get all that out of there. So, yeah, little cleanup. I don't mind. I can lube it. It's going to give me a chance to peek in here where that lock stick is happening. I'm pretty sure that's my spot right there. But I don't think I'm going to do anything to it. Even though I've got it apart, it's nothing for me to get it apart again and deal with it later. I'm going to try to let it do its thing. Nice edge, super even, all the way from the front to the back, a wonderful tip. You know, they do such a great job of grinding these knives. World-class sharpeners, in my opinion. This stuff comes super sharp, really nice. Let's keep going and get it back together. There's a little bit of finagling with the button lock that you got to kind of go through, but it's not bad. It's nothing scary to it. Get these bearings kind of rubbed out. Any dirty oil in there. I mean, you know, after you do this with a few hundred knives, it's kind of second nature, and you know, you kind of know how to get through it, but it's not complicated. I'd encourage, you know, anybody that's getting into knife collecting, that, you know, just bought their first knife, or, you know, whether it's a $300 knife or a $30 knife, man, to me, this is part of it. I love having my screwdrivers and my Loctite, my oil, and, you know, touching everything, and I don't know, that sounded kind of weird, I guess. You know, I don't go sniffing people or nothing like that, but I do like fondling my knives. I like taking them apart, and, you know, there's a lot of great engineering and fit and finish work and milling and manufacturing that goes into these, and they're simple enough that I don't have to come up with the designs. I'm not much of a designer, but I do have the ability to, you know, take some apart, watch how I do it, and then ultimately use that disassembly to reassemble fairly confidently. And so, yeah, I'm not really intimidated. I just kind of get after it. I figure if I can take it apart, I can put it back together. And I'm going to start with these scales first. Seems like a simple first step. Get these on. They weren't in the way of anything, so I can eliminate a couple of screws and a couple of parts and get it going. There we go. Nice. And then I believe I'm going to start with this side here. I've got a captured pivot pin that will kind of set things right. I know this one was that very back one for the pocket clip, and then I think this was the forward one. There we go. And then the spacer went on, they're the same, so they both get a spacer. Very nice. Okay. That makes sense. That'll be the same distance, but this one will rise up to catch that pocket clip with a screw. So now the only thing left for me to do is figure out this button. And let's think about it for a second. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about it for a second. So based on the side of the knife, that button's got to go down like so. Because the press is on that side. This screw, I didn't wipe it off, so I'm going to take a second, maybe a little more delicate rag. This one was brought to me thanks to Petrified Fish. Kind of a neat little, I don't know, it feels kind of microfibery. Yeah, there we go. So, let's see. That makes sense. Pretty sure I got a racetrack down there. Let's get a drop of oil down in there. That way it'll encourage that washer to spin if necessary. If it'll help. A little lubrication. And then a bearing. And then I got a blade. And now that blade is going to have to participate with that plunger, that push button. Heck, that wasn't hard at all right there. I don't feel like I'm seated properly. I am not. What am I missing? There we go. All right, let's try again. Get that spring in there. Okay. Hey, and I don't have that great a dexterity, man. You know? And I'm still able to function with all these little parts and stuff. I don't know that I'd be taking apart a Swiss watch or nothing. So one of the things that I can see already that the action is going to improve on this knife is right down in here. It's kind of small, but I can see where the bearings are cutting into this this black wash finish, but they haven't quite completely done it yet. So as I use this knife, those bearings will cut in, man, and this thing will just it'll get smoother and smoother and smoother. No question. Now, what I'm talking about doesn't really address that lock stick, but kind of same principle. You know, the more that works, the smoother that's going to get. And then the only issue here is to get that spring lined up in that hole, and that's how easy that was. Done. So I think I'll start with that pivot screw first, just to get that button secure. I don't have to worry about that pressing out or getting out of alignment. And then I'll come back and retune this as I go. And these two screws are the same. So I'll put this first one over here. And then I'll deal with that pocket clip real quick. You know, for all of the, man, thousands of these little tiny screws that I've dealt with through time, I didn't wipe the clip off, so let me wipe that off real quick. Out of all the thousands of these little things that I've dealt with, I've never stripped one, ever. So, I mean, I know I hear guys talk about it, and I hear them talk about their bits, and how, hey, I stripped my bits, or, you know, I can't get these screws out. I don't know. I've never stripped one of these, and I've never stripped one of these, even in the cheapest of knives. So I just think it's, you know, being patient, putting your leverage properly, the right downforce versus side force. Yeah, that's not lined up right. I can see that right now. I've got that screw tight, sorta. So I'm gonna back that out a little bit and try to seat that, because it is not seated. There it goes. All right. All right, let's lock that so I don't cut my finger. Put a little torque on these two. That feels good. I'm going to back this out and then just catch it, I can feel these scales moving a little bit. So once I feel like I'm tight, then I'm going to come out a little bit and restart. See if I'm tuned properly. And check that. I mean, yeah, see, I've got a little play now this way, so I'm not tight enough. So I'm actually going to stay right there, and I'm going to rerun this some. I mean, there's some room right at the end there. Let's try that. Felt smooth. Yeah, it's gone now. Whew, a little bit of lock stick. I mean, I'm gonna, if I'm just throwing it out there with the button, no issues. A little tiny bit of stick that way. But if I catch that thumb and throw it, it's sticking pretty good. But again, I'd say in order for me to measure that, you know, let me mess with that a little bit, get that to break in, and you know, if I have to disassemble and polish that up versus break it in, I'll throw another video. You know, I don't know if I'll throw a video. Maybe I'll just put it in the comments and update. If you're curious how it turns out, ask the question, and it'll remind me to, hey, somebody's interested, and I'll talk about that lock stick. But it definitely has it. Let's check for our curses real quick. I cannot, there is a wide gap here, but I cannot touch that blade in there. So I'm going to call that a pass. That's a good job. I mean, to me, it should never have contact in there, but sometimes. And then, yeah, there's no way for me to catch that blade either. It's way back in there. No way I'm catching that. So, you know, good to go. It passes on both of those big time curses. The thumb stud's pretty comfortable. No issues throwing that out other than that lock stick. But like I say, I'm not concerned about that. It's got great lockup. Let's see how it cuts. And then I'll let you guys go. Yeah, I mean, good enough for disco. Man, that thing will cut. No worries about that. That blade's it'll take care of itself for sure. So if I had a criticism, it'd be twofold. It would be, number one, the lock stick. But, you know, listen, I'd rather have them build it so that it's sticky, and then those two pieces of metal can meld together. I'd much rather have that than have lock rock here, you know. And this thing's solid as a rock. I'm super happy with that. And then the pocket clip, you know, I'm going to put it in my pocket one more time. Let's see if I can do it where you can see it. So to just try to put it in there, that's not going to work. So you got to, man, that's a two-hand deal for sure. Got to pull that pocket tight and then really push her down in there. Once it's in there, solid. And then coming out, it's pretty grippy. It probably ultimately would get your pants. So, I mean, I've worked on it. I've tried to do a couple of fixes to flatten those out. You know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a way to put some spring in this so that it's not so rigid. Maybe that helps. But good ergonomics, really good planted thumb. So, you know, hey, overall, I really like this knife. And I paid $114 for it. Pretty solid. And I'll run that lock stick out of it. And I think it'll be good to go. So, hey, appreciate you watching.